What is up, tube users? I'm the stereotypical gamer, and welcome back to another installment of Overwatch 2 Heroes, an in-depth guide. Today, we are taking a look at who I believe is the hardest hero in the game to play, Echo. Let's jump right into things and quickly talk about her passive ability. Echo's passive ability is Glide. This ability works pretty much the same as Mercy's passive. Whenever you are in the air, you can hold the jump key and will glide until you hit the ground. It's good to note that this ability will give you a 50% movement increase when moving horizontally. Now, let's get into the more complex abilities by talking about her primary fire. Echo's primary fire is Tri-Shot. This is a projectile-based attack that fires 3 shots in a triangular pattern. Each pellet deals 17 damage for a total of 51 damage if all the pellets hit the target. It's worth noting that this pattern for the shots is always the same, with 2 points on top and 1 point below. And while each shot fires 3 pellets, it only consumes 1 ammo per shot. It's also worth noting that the spread increases the further away the shots go. Now, let's go over Echo's secondary fire. Echo's secondary fire is Sticky Bombs. These are also a projectile that deals area of effect damage instead. Each sticky bomb deals 5 damage on direct hit and 25 explosion damage to any enemies within a 2-meter radius of the explosion. Each volley of sticky bombs fires 6 shots, so in total the volley can deal 180 damage to a single target if all shots hit. A couple things to note about this ability is the projectile speed is considerably slower than her primary fire. Because of that, it can be slightly more difficult to use on moving targets that are further away. Now, let's dive into Echo's first ability. Echo's first ability is Flight. This, unsurprisingly, gives Echo the ability to fly. This ability lasts for 3 seconds. During the first second of this ability, Echo's movement speed is increased to about 27 meters per second, then sharply decreases down to about 8 meters per second for the remaining 2 seconds. A good thing to note about this ability is it cannot be interrupted by any means, although if Echo is rooted or stunned, she will be temporarily unable to fly. It's also worth noting that after the first second of burst speed, Echo's horizontal flying speed is slower than her passive gliding. A good tip for this ability is to use it for the first second for the burst speed, then cancel the ability so you can use your passive to glide to stay airborne. That way Echo has more speed in the air and the ability will come off the cooldown quicker since the cooldown starts when the ability ends. Now, let's move on to Echo's next ability. Echo's second ability is Focusing Beam. This is a beam attack that deals 50 damage per second normally and 175 damage per second to targets under 50% HP. The ability lasts for 2 seconds, so normally it will deal a total of 100 damage on targets and 350 damage to targets under 50% HP. This bonus damage for this ability is also applied to turrets and barriers that are below 50% HP. The range of this beam is 16 meters. Because this is a beam attack, it cannot headshot enemies, but can pass through things like deflect and defense matrix. Now, let's move on to what is probably the hardest part of Echo's kit, her ultimate. Echo's ultimate ability is Duplicate. This allows Echo to copy an enemy target for up to 15 seconds. During this time, Echo builds the ultimate of the copied target 5 times faster than normal. If Echo copies a tank, she will only have a maximum of 300 HP. This ability ends after 15 seconds or when Echo reaches 1 HP, after which she will be invulnerable for 1 second and will revert to her original health, unless her health was under 100, in which case she will gain up to 100 HP. This ability is what makes Echo the most difficult hero, in my opinion. You need to know the entirety of the enemy's kit you are duplicating in order to be effective with it, which can be difficult in a game with 30 plus heroes, each with a different and unique kit. Now, let's move on to talk about heroes that counter and are countered by Echo. Echo is a very versatile hero, with good damage poking from range and high burst damage when up close. As for a tank hero she plays well against, I'm gonna go with Sigma. Echo is able to easily burst down or maneuver around Sigma's barrier with ease, thanks to her ability to fly. Plus, her focusing beam can melt through Sigma's kinetic grasp when he's below 50% HP. A DPS hero Echo plays well against is Mei. Mei works best up close, trying to cut off enemies with her wall and slowing down their escape. Luckily, Echo can maneuver around that pretty easily with her flying. Plus, Echo's high burst combo is easy to set up on a Mei once she's used her ice block. And finally, a support hero Echo plays well against is Lifeweaver. A lot of Lifeweaver's escape ability comes from his pedal platform, allowing him to get vertical very quickly. But thanks to Echo's ability to fly, she can pretty easily get to him and burst him down. Now, let's look at the flip side of things and see which heroes counter Echo. While Echo does have really good burst potential, it's mostly projectile based and slow moving at that, so quicker heroes can easily avoid the damage she dishes out. A tank hero that plays well against Echo is D.Va. D.Va has the flying capabilities to deal with an Echo that is airborne. Plus, her defense matrix can eat a lot of Echo's burst damage fairly easily. A DPS hero that plays well against Echo is Soldier 76. Hit scan heroes are always the best option to deal with flying heroes, and in my opinion, Soldier 76 is the best option. With good damage and decent self-sustain thanks to his healing station, this matchup isn't favorable for Echo. Finally, a support hero that plays well against Echo is Baptiste. Bap's kit revolves around saving teammates that are below 50 HP, where Echo usually thrives. Because of this, it can be difficult for Echo to try and burst down heroes effectively. Now that we've gone over all the counters, let's dive into some tips and tricks for Echo. My first tip with Echo is, like I was saying before, you really just want to use her flight for that first second, and a good way to get used to doing that is to switch her ability to fly to hold instead of toggle. That way you hold the ability button in order to use it fully, and basically then you can just press the ability, same as toggling it, but you'll just have that first second of flight, which makes it really easy to use. I think the hardest part about Echo's kit is knowing who is best to duplicate in any really given situation, and there's no really right answer here. Typically, I don't ever duplicate tanks just because they're going to have a maximum of 300 HP, and it's not really a lot to be a tank with, so I normally just avoid trying to be a tank. Typically, I'll go for DPS heroes because their ultimates are pretty effective at dealing damage and taking out enemies, so normally go for them, but also support heroes aren't a bad option. I usually like to duplicate a support hero if one of our supports are out of the fight. That way we can gain back another support and I can help sustain our team while our support that died is running back. But honestly, the best advice I can give is you really need to be duplicating heroes that you're comfortable with. For the most part, I mean, if you go in and duplicate a hero that you've never played before, it's not gonna end well. You're not really gonna get any value out of their ultimates or anything. So I'd avoid duplicating heroes that you've never played before and try and just duplicate heroes that you're comfortable with and you know how to play. With her focusing beam, it is always a good idea to use it on heroes that are under 50% HP. But you can also use it for that, at least that first second, to get heroes that are like 60% HP, because it will do 100 damage in that first second. And if it's a low health hero, like any 200 HP hero, it will finish him off in that second with 175 damage. Typically, a burst combo when using Echo is you want to try and land as many sticky beams as you can, and then you're able to get about 2 shots of your primary fire off before those go off, and then you want to go immediately into your focusing beam, because for the most part, unless it's like a tank hero, that's going to do enough damage to get them under 50% HP, and even with some tank heroes, that will get them under 50%. Another good tip to note is that Echo is a levitating hero, so you won't hear her footsteps at all. So she can be really good at getting on the flank. Although when you use your fly ability, you can hear her hovering and gliding around. It's pretty noticeable when that happens. But other than that, if she's just walking around, or levitating around rather, you can't hear her at all, and so it can be really easy to flank enemies that way. Another tip I have with her secondary fire with the sticky bombs is because it's a slower projectile speed and because it comes out in a burst, it can be pretty easy if you're looking around to kind of spread them out. You don't want to do that. You want to try and just get them as straight as possible. Even if you miss the target by just shooting them straight, you kind of just want them all to go in the same place to get the highest burst damage you can with them. But for the most part, if you land majority of the sticky bomb volley on, as long as it's not a tank, but any like 200 HP hero, you can just use the focusing beam to finish him off. Usually that alone is going to be enough of a burst to finish off an enemy. Now, typically with her flying ability, I normally don't use that. I mean, sometimes I'll use it to get vertical, but for the most part I use it as an escape tool, just because you do get that burst of initial speed. It can be really good to just escape out of a situation that seems dire. Another thing I forgot to mention is if you duplicate a hero that has like some sort of turrets, like Torbjorn or Symmetra or someone like that, the turrets will remain after duplication wears off for I think about 4 seconds. So it can be good to copy those guys to get those turrets and have them remain out even after duplication wears off. And I believe once duplication wears off, the turrets are still active and still attacking enemies. They can give you ult charge from the damage that they deal. But that's all the tips and tricks I have for you guys today. Make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed the video, comment any other tips and tricks for Echo you have, and make sure to hit that subscribe button. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.